Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
All right, volunteer youth workers, and secretly those paid youth workers that are also listening.
Yeah,
we're glad that you're
paid
listening.
Ones.
Yes, because you got to check it out. If you're going to send it to your volunteer team, you probably want to know what are these guys actually saying.
Good plan.
Yeah, that's totally fine. We're grateful for that.
We respect that.
Yeah, this conversation that we started last week with Ian Lawson is a good one, Sid. You obviously people know if they listened to last week's episode, you've known Ian for a while.
Dude, Jay,
he
let me
shared
just
a
say
story, yeah, but it was good. No, it's nothing.
I know, and I was like, really, Ian, that story? Okay, fair enough. I mean, Ian.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Jared, Ian was like, I've been only blessed with great church experiences. Ian, I spent 11 years working under Ian at the E-Free Church in Lethbridge, like just the best. I have the utmost respect for him. When I think about next stage of life, he is my model for who I want to be. But he led our church with grace. So yeah, Jared, he told the story of the first retreat that I was responsible for. I had allowed volunteers to run it and wasn't really invested. Shame on me. And boy, did I ever lose us a lot of money. And I had to go before the elders board and let them know and say sorry. And that was a season.
Yeah, and it wasn't that it was lost money. It was just that you overspent the budget by a chunk.
A lot. Jared, that was 20 years ago, and I think I overspent it by $20,000. Did he say that by any chance? That's a lot.
I don't actually know how many.
I don't know how I still had a job. Bro, I don't even ask. Well, here's what happened. I mean, I don't know if I want. Here's what happened. Is again, I wasn't invested, but our volunteers, and we had 2 students that were into making this thing happen. So we were like, let's empower the kids. And they just made an assumption they were going to get 600 people in that room plus. And they got a band, like a legit band, and they did all those things. And we had 60 people register. So there it is.
There it is. Just like that. Well, the point is Ian is absolutely a beauty. We appreciate him as our organization, and he had some really good angles on this. We want to continue this conversation because it's such an important one. Can I still lead my small group when I'm personally struggling? And this is legitimately a question in from a youth worker. And to be fair, for any of us that have been in ministry leadership, this is something that we wrestle with and deal with all the time, not just personally, but because we've got people and life is happening. And so you've got this commitment to show up, on Wednesday night or on Sunday night, whatever the thing is, Friday night. And then all of a sudden life is happening. And, sometimes you just cannot show up because it's, your car broke down on the way. And so sure, you got to deal with something, or, your house floods and you're like, shoot, or my kids. So there's those reasons, we get that. And then there's the other reasons where it's actually inappropriate for you to continue being at your group.
Correct.
And I mean, we say this lightly, but we're categorizing obviously the whole idea of you've disqualified yourself for ministry. That's not what we want to talk about here, but we know that that's a category. It's in this messy middle of I'm not feeling it. I'm kind of dealing with my own stuff, or, life is hard, or I feel stressed out, or I feel like I'm burning out. And so should I still lead? Should I call it quits? What am I supposed to do? And this is something that's real. We hear it at our conferences. We hear it with youth workers.
Yeah. And Jared, we were talking about this right beforehand. And you referenced that in your church, you guys had this conversation actually this past weekend, which I think is really significant here. And I mean, there's lots of ways we want to frame this out. But one of the interesting things that makes, I think, this conversation so much more kind of on the surface maybe now than it was 20, 30 years ago. You think about hearing Ian speak about this, probably talks about it. He talks about it a little bit differently than the way that we would think about it. And I think part of it is, Jer, we're in this kind of cultural moment where we give so much authority to how we're feeling things. And then out of that, we have such a high value for authenticity. And so because, and you need to actually talk about this a little bit, but because we've given the locus of authority to our emotions and we so highly value authenticity, that I think there's a tendency to think that if our emotions don't align with the significance or purpose of the moment, that somehow there's actually a moral issue with us being in that space because it feels inauthentic, right? And so hey Jared, talk a little bit about that locus of authority idea, because I think this is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even I'm thinking about, because a couple of weeks ago we were talking about kids with complicated family dynamics, and Jonathan Cornelson's sharing about like, hey, sometimes students are feeling a certain way, and so it's not that these two things are at odds, but there is a sense that in these days we kind of wrestle with, hey, I want to be honest with you. I'm doing an internal work, and so like this is how I'm feeling, or this is what I'm processing, and there's some good things that have come from that kind of approach, but one of the shadow sides. And this is, at the church that I'm at, we had a guest communicator doing brilliant work. His name's Sam Reimer, on self-curated spirituality, or on self-directed spirituality, and this change of authority from something external to me. So like I know about who I am and about how I'm supposed to feel and approach life from like the scriptures, who Jesus says I am. And instead it has shifted to, and he used the example of the U.S. Army, which is funny, and he made the joke, which did not get many laughs, because he's a Mennonite. He's a Mennonite brethren. He's like, of course a Mennonite will go to look to the U.S. Army. And so totally. Just a chuckle at the front. I gave him a chuckle. But the idea back in the 60s was like, your country needs you. There's an external force that needs you to join in. Whereas then it shifted to be all that you can be, become the person that you're supposed to be. And so that shift means that when I'm not feeling it, now I feel like my moral obligation is, I should tell you, and then you should care deeply about my feelings, and you should reinforce them in some ways, or at least affirm them. And that can be terrible.
Yeah, totally. Well, and here's part of it, Jared, like the scriptures actually speak so much to this idea. They use the language of suffering, of patience, endurance, steadfastness. Do you know what I mean? And really, by the way, the scriptures highly, highly values our affections and emotions. In fact, but the scriptures actually call us to be responsible for our emotions and our affections. That we actually have a responsibility to by God's grace, begin to shape those in alignment with what he says to be true. So one of the phrases we use at camp, and by the way, camp is a great place to process this. Jer, you and I have both worked at camp. I'm working at camp right now, obviously. And I don't know a single solitary person who wakes up every day and has their affections and emotions in alignment with the responsibilities and purpose that lies before them. Like, it doesn't actually exist, right? So I'll quickly tell the story. We had a kid cruise this summer, and I'm going to tell the story at our conferences again. So when you hear it again, everybody, make sure you chuckle as well. Thank you, Jerry. You'll sit in the front row. Give me a nice chuckle. But Cruz, first week of camp, has the absolute worst, hardest cabin ever. And Cruz is a grade 11 student, by the way. He's just an absolute beauty. And what we didn't realize is we had placed every single kid in his cabin was on behavioral medications, and we just hadn't tracked it. So he had so much against him. And at the end of the summer, he's talking about how God, we were just having a time of thanking God for what he'd done. And he just tells the story. He just gets up and goes, hey, listen, you guys, my first week was really hard. You all know that. And he's just saying God's really good. And he goes, but that week was so hard. He goes, every morning I would wake up, I spend time doing my devos, and I just go, Lord, today is going to be a better day, and I'm in. And then he just goes, and every single day it wasn't. He goes, every single day. It was so hard, and so for him, every single day was him going, this is how I feel, but this is what's required of me. And so I'm going to figure out how to, by God's grace, lean in and be faithful in this moment that's in front of me. Do you know what I mean? And so, this is reality. Many of us as youth, I don't know that single youth worker who hasn't experienced this reality at some point in time.
Yeah, it is that struggle. It's like, okay, but what do I do? So, maybe Sid, we can give some additional insight or some ideas, both for as a volunteer listening, like, okay, but what do I do when I'm feeling this way. And then also maybe, a word for youth workers that are volunteers, but even point leaders, if I'm meant to encourage or to inspire the people around me. Because I think sometimes, like I know from being in leadership, you get the message from somebody like it was a hard day at school, or I got a lot of assignments, like I can't make it in, I've got a lot going on. And so how should we respond so that people are understanding we still want them to rise to the occasion? We think it's still worth sacrificing for, if that makes sense. So which one which angle do you want to hit first?
All of them. They're all spinning in my head right now. Hey, let me just talk a little bit about a foundational practice that we use.
Like that.
How's that sound? Okay. Yeah. So what we'll do is I'll share a rule that we work with our summer staff, and then we'll talk about the exceptions, of course, that we should keep in mind in light of that. So,
and then you got to end. My goal is that at the very end of this podcast, you're going to sing the old hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," for our audience. It'd be just a beautiful, that's the answer to everything.
I feel locked in right now.
I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to convince you to do that.
It is well.
Yeah. It responds to this exact thing.
Isn't this amazing? And we could just have a moment where we could all circle up and digitally hold hands. It's going to be so good.
It would mean something.
Moment. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Anyways,
what's the rule?
Beauty. Okay, so this is what we teach. We're really wrestling with this at camp. What does it look like for us to be resilient individuals? And what we try to say is we say where we look at our emotions aren't primarily masters, they're messengers. So we generally say emotions are rarely great masters, but they're really important and very good messengers. And we want to be careful not to belittle emotions or think they're less than or demonize emotions by any means. They're a part of who we are. God's created us. We want them in alignment with we want our affections to be in alignment with his affection. So there's lots of good things. But at summer this year, the passage that we took a look at was in James chapter 1, in verse 2, where it says, "Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds. For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." A couple of quick principles here. God is at work through the challenges that we face. And it's through the challenges that he actually develops our character. In fact, it says it's through these difficult challenges that he perfects us, that he makes us into the people he's designed us to be. At the very beginning, it says something really interesting. "Count it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you meet trials of various kinds." So it's going to be hard. That's clear. But there's a way of responding that's not normative in our cultural environment where, our emotions get to own us. And so that becomes our reality. Instead, what he says is he uses this language of thinking. He says, "Count it all joy." And he's saying, hey, there's a way that we step back, we process and consider what's actually taking place. And with our mind, we understand that there is something more going on here, that we can actually go, oh, there's something good that God is at work doing in me through this. And therefore, my number one movement doesn't need to be to escape the hardship, because he says, let steadfastness have its full effect, but that I can actually kind of rest into this moment and take the right next step, saying, God, you're going to use this difficulty to actually shape and form me into the person you want me to be. Therefore, I have a type of hope or joy that's not just simple emotionalism that allows me to move forward in this moment. So here's what we do with our staff. We say to our staff, hey, there's going to be plenty of times when you're going to have moments where you're going to feel like quitting. You're going to start to kind of freak out a little bit. It's going to become really difficult and challenging. Here's what we would like you to do. In that moment, maturity says this, that you're going to stop and pause. You're going to create a little bit of time and space, which means, okay, I need to stop. I need to breathe. I need to step back. Then what I want to do is try to become aware of what's happening. Hey, what am I feeling right now? What is this reality that is taking place with me? And what's at the root of it? Now, therapists would call this cognitive behavioral therapy. As followers of Christ, we would call it loving God with our mind. And so what we do is we try to become aware of what's happening. And then when we understand where this is coming from, then we go, okay, this is real right now. I'm not going to pretend it's not real, but what are the resources that I have at my disposal? What is the truth that I can know about this? So like, it might be something like, oh, actually, this isn't a terrible moment. I'm just really tired. Or it might be, actually, I'm assuming that those people are all angry at me, but actually, there's no reason for me to assume that. There's a million other possible ways for me to interpret that reality. Or I'm not feeling very affirmed, but actually what's true is that I'm fighting to be faithful in God's God. So we assess what's happening. We take a look at the resources. What are the resources I have? I have leaders who care for me. I can go to them and process. I could actually go take a nap because I need sleep. Sleep would be really helpful. I know what God's word says, that he'll never leave me or forsake me. He says he'll give me whatever I need to do what he's asked me to do. And then in light of those resources, I go, oh, okay, what's my right next step that I should take right now? And so what happens is I actually have volition. I'm not allowing my emotions to actually be my owner. They don't need to be my owner, but they're really important indicators. They're a real important part of who I am. But I actually get to respond to my emotions through the truth. I don't need to let them own me. And what happens is when we're not just white knuckling it and fighting through, we're actually thoughtfully understanding, assessing, and then taking a right next step. And I think this is the key piece, that as volunteers, when you're on a really healthy team, part of the resources that you have in front of you are your team. You have a point leader probably that wants to help shepherd you. Of course, we have the scriptures. We have other people around us supporting us that maybe it's like, hey, could you just, I need a moment for someone to pray with me before I move in here, et cetera, et cetera. Or you look for collective wisdom. I'm not actually sure how I should respond to this. Tell me what you think or what you're seeing. And I think the point is, Jared, that when we start to love God with our minds in this ways, and again, there's lots of complexity to this. It's not simple. There's lots of other elements that might be at play. But in general, that we can actually build a type of resilience that says, okay, God, you've got me. I'm going to continue to take this next step, even though I don't feel like it, but I'm trusting you. And so that actually is the most authentic way that we get to live, where God is actually the definer of what's real and true, and he becomes our authority. So what's authentic is actually our trust and obedience and treasuring of him that allows us to take the next step, not primarily our emotional state. And that's a really resilient place to be. James would say that that's the way forward, where God perfects us.
Yeah. So I don't, what do I want to say? Because there's something about, I'm still playing around. So we're both like, we're thinkers. We're not feelers, in the sense of like, we're not often, maybe ruled by our emotions in the same kind of way. But so what I'm wrestling with is, yes, we're not ruled by our emotions, but I'm careful to overemphasize the cognitive. Here's what I'm thinking. Jesus says all sorts of things, specifically about emotions, do not fear. And so there's, in some ways it is affirming what you just said. There's like this cognitive sense, you do not fear. And so then you're telling your emotions what's meant to be. I just want to make sure to make space for the idea that, hey, the emotions that we're meant to feel in any given moment,
really good.
We can let the scripture speak to and still kind of be led by the emotions. What we're trying to say is that you're meant to be led by the right ones.
By the right ones. And this is where, hey, that's excellent. Yeah, that's really, really good. And let me just say this, like many emotions are reactive. And so they're a response in the moment. And then the question becomes, what do we actually do with that? Right? Like that's actually the bigger question. And I think what our goal is not to remove emotions, but to align the right emotions up with what is true and what God says, so that we can respond well in the moment. Like there's certain things we should be really angry about. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's certain things that that should be a type of fear that should move us to like avoid. Like there's lots of good and right things that are a part of our emotions, but what we're trying to do is create space so that by God's grace we could see alignment, that our emotions would be in alignment with what God says to be really true, and then therefore our behaviors will be in right alignment with what he says to be true.
Yes. Yeah, that's
I think
the
that's
right
what
thing.
we're shooting for. It's good.
Yeah, and it's just because I think about like, be strong and courageous. Obviously not to but it's to Joshua. Like he's claiming specific emotional appeal, and then even from a thought perspective, take every thought captive. Totally. Like there's this sense that we're actually not meant to be beholden to these things. We're meant to, in light of the scriptures, the truth of the Word of God, let that shine in, and then that will dictate where we go. So that the fruit of the Spirit becomes what we experience: the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, self-control.
Yeah, and you know what I'm finding, Jared, is when I'm getting older, it's not that I don't have these battles, and it's not like, so for instance, dude, we had a week, just a little while ago where we were doing some heavy invested ministry, And then, our team, in a sense, took a couple of days off and reflected back. And there were some things about it that we wish we would have done differently and done again. We had some unique emotional responses to it. I think, I was talking with Steve, both of us probably had a little bit of a dip. So these emotional experiences haven't like changed a lot as I've got older. What's happened is I think I have access to more tools and awareness of the truth that allows me to respond differently to them than what I used to. And then I have a way to do battle where I can consider it joy, where I can let steadfastness have its full effect in a way that I didn't do when I was like 13, 14, or 15. So it doesn't mean that I'm not wrestling. It's just that I feel like there's some maturity, there's some more tools, there's some more resources, which is what we would love to continue to give to our youth workers in this space.
Yeah. So then it goes, because it makes me think of two stories. One, I make the joke often when I preach on Sundays around, if you're talking about following your heart, that's the worst advice you can give. You'd realize that totally. Because imagine telling a 13-year-old boy, just follow your heart and do whatever your heart says. And everybody laughs. Because of course that's crazy. And so then the question is, what's different about your heart now that you're 33 or even 53? Hopefully it's being refined by the Lord. And so that's the hope that we have. And so, our examples are, hey, as we've grown and we're hopefully maturing in Christ, so then I've got all sorts of grace for our youth workers, especially our younger youth workers, who this is like early stage of the journey. And so I'm wondering if we can shift a bit to say, when you have people on your team, whether they're a peer, they're another volunteer, or you're overseeing things, and you're recognizing, man, it seems like they've got personal struggles, they've got challenges, issues. They're bringing those challenges and problems to your youth night, and or saying, hey, I got to take a break, or I'm burning out. What's the right response? Knowing that part of what we want to do for our friends is actually teach them this thing that we're wrestling with and learning ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Hey, let me throw this out there, Jared. We're kind of processing this a little bit together out loud here. But one of the things that our friend Steve talks about is he says when people are kind of in emotional distress, different generations make different assumptions, but sometimes our general term is I'm burnt out. That means I'm overworked. I need to shut down and quit. What Steve would say, that could be the case. And maybe you need to pause or reorder your schedule or that sort of thing. It could be. But maybe what you're feeling is different than overworked. It might be overwhelmed. And overwhelmed might have a few other ways to engage and address that. So for instance, when I'm overwhelmed, maybe when the Bible says that we should bear one another's burdens, part of what I need to do is find someone who can help bear my burden with me. Do you know what I mean? And that's where community could be amazing. Or maybe it is overworked and I actually need to Sabbath. Or maybe, it could be these things. I just think I want to say that it's probably multidimensional, and there might be a few different ways that we should take a look at it. But what I do think, and Jared, I wanted to say this, even talking about emotions, one of the ways that Paul tells us as followers of Christ to roll together is that we would rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn. So we actually have this responsibility to come alongside one another and bear each other up in our right emotional spaces as well. And so we shouldn't look to just be stoics and avoid that. And I think this is where we really need the community. And I think sometimes we need the community to help us with discernment. And all of these are important and appropriate for us as we're trying to figure out how do we appropriately and with integrity serve our kids in some challenging spaces.
So maybe if we can answer the simple question, what should I do? Or can I still leave my small group when a person's struggling?
Let's go right back to that. Yeah,
the answer. Yeah, I wonder if just the simple answer is, we don't know, but you should talk about it with somebody else on your team.
Exactly, Jer. And I think the other thing I want to say is that just because your emotions aren't in alignment with the purpose or mission or practice in front of you, that by engaging in that practice or purpose does not mean that you're lacking integrity or you're being inauthentic.
Yeah.
It might mean that there's a different authority in your life that you're fighting to be submitted to. That's really, really beautiful. And that might be an even greater act of love for your kids to say, I don't feel like it today, but even in light of that, I'm going to step out and love these kids to the best of my ability by God's grace. And that might actually be a much greater act of love and service than when you actually feel like it. Do you know what I mean? So I would just say don't run away from that. You shouldn't necessarily run away from that.
Yeah. And also still check with your team if you should even tell that to your students, because I'm just picturing one leader being like, hey, you guys, I really don't. Here. This is the worst day, but I'm here anyway.
But I'm loving you so much right now.
Yeah. And I've probably said this before, but I think it's always worthwhile. Like, hey, we're dancing around a little bit because we do think that the burden is light. Like Jesus says, come to me, all you. And that's beautiful. And then at the same time, those disciples in the first century went to their death for their faith. And so it's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't burn out while you're serving Jesus, but sometimes you might burn up in a flaming fire as a martyr, and that's okay too. And so it's just like, hey, two things we're wrestling with, and we just don't know.
Real, yeah. There's a point. Yeah. Hey, can we just take a look at Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane for a minute? Like, honestly, like, like real moment, dude. Like, seriously overwhelmed. And he goes, Lord, could you take this cup from me, but not my will, your will be done. And so we actually see the tension of Christ in his humanity in that moment, saying, this is really what I'm feeling. I'd love to be out of here, but Lord, if you're calling me, I trust that you'll give me what I need to take this right next step. So there's room for this. There really is.
Yeah.
You know?
So I'm just updating my new recruitment strategy for some people. I think they need to hear, hey, you need to join our youth ministry team. Come suffer for Jesus.
Suffer.
Come suffer. Like, this is just pure suffering, and that's going to be great. It'll refine you.
And by engaging in absolute suffering, it will be a great act of love that you get to bless our kids with. So thanks for that wonderful gift. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Oh, man. As always, we do want you to know that as you do, even with wrong motivation or difficult days, like, it makes an eternal difference. So we're grateful for that.
It does.
And we do believe that it is well with your soul, even when you face insurmountable. Yeah. It's good. It's a good hymn.
I'm not singing that.
The story.
It's a great hymn, bro. The story's amazing. Yeah. And you know what? We're just not even going to sing the hymn right now.
Yeah, we sang it earlier. I think it works.
I did sing it. It was great. They could reflect back on it. Last words.
Any
last quick word. Thank you for what you're doing. We always say that. And it is okay to stop, take a moment, access people. Hey, I'm just not there. Could you pray for me? That's okay. And there might be times when you need to take a break. That's really okay. But there's going to be times when you go, even though I feel this way, I'm still going to take that right next step. And the Lord is going to bless that in ways that maybe you don't see in the moment. But faith. Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much, you guys. You're not alone when it's hard. You're just not alone.